Okay, so now continuing with some of the conventions in the UV editing window, I'm going to go down here and change this mode back. I'm not going to explain all this now, that comes later for UV editing, but this is basically just changing how you can select things in the UV view compared to the 3D window. But anyway, so in this mode, and I have it set to points, you see down here I can set some points, edges, faces, and then islands would be like a whole UV island, right? But you see this is consistent with it over here, points, faces, and edges, right? So now anyways, with it set to points, I can now drag one of these points around. Remember, we talked about snapping in another video, right? So we actually have snapping available in the 3D view just as we do in the 2D editor view. So I could take these points and simply snap them to another point, right? So snapping works the same way, right? And I talked about translations and all that and how that works the same way. There are other things that work the same way, and a better way to illustrate some of those are in another setup. So let's go to animation. Alright, so now in animation we have the dope sheet and we have the timeline. So now let's take this guy, and we're going to jump ahead, of course, and just sort of get into a little bit of animating. Woohoo, we're going to animate. Alright, so I on the keyboard will make yourself a keyframe in a 3D view. So let's just choose location for that. And let's drag the slider with your left mouse button to keyframe 40. And let's move this guy up here. And let's location and turn off the snapping if you have that on. So you can just see this guy moving up, right? Okay, so the cube is moving up. Alright, now remember over here I can actually make copies of this cube. Remember, Shift D to make a copy. Shift D to make a copy of that, right? So they all have the same animation on them. They all snapped back to the same place. But now the thing I want to illustrate though is that let's go up here to the dope sheet editor. See how I have my keyframes here? I can actually right mouse drag and drag them around just like I can right mouse drag this guy, right? So the translations are the same, and so are the duplications. Right, so this is going to snap back because it's got a keyframe on it, right? So now let's take it and let's take this keyframe, these set of keyframes, and Shift D and duplicate that, and then slide. See, that's the same as Shift D, duplicate, and move over there. I did exactly the same thing. I right-clicked it, I Shift D, and moved it. So now I have more. Now I have a keyframe at the beginning. It goes up, and then it slides back down again to where I had copied the one from the first frame, right? And so now in the middle, let's just take this guy and let's just do the same thing, Shift D, and then set it in the middle. So now I can drag the slider here, so I just got it going up and down like that, right? So I'm only illustrating the fact that these conventions are the same. The translation conventions, the copy conventions, duplicate conventions, that kind of thing. These are all pretty much the same. You can drag one, series of channels, with the right click of the mouse, and so on and so forth. You can move these things all around. And in the graph editor, of course, once you get these curves going, this is right click to grab the curves. You can right click and grab the keyframe and drag it around, right? You can rotate it with the R key. You can scale it with the scale key, and you can even scale these guys, right? You can also use B on the keyboard to drag across and select all, just like you can use the B to drag and select all here. So if I go back over here and B, drag, select, put the timeline back over here, and use the S key to scale them, I can now scale them from where the timeline is, right? And I move the timeline up here, and now I can scale them all from there. It'll scale from where the timeline is, right? So these are conventions that are throughout the whole interface, as far as translating, moving, scaling, duplicating, and all that stuff. It's all fairly consistent. Once you learn it for the 3D view and for modeling, you'll be able to use these things all over the place. Okay? So that'll be enough for this video, and we're ready to move on.